welcome to my podcast. I'm really excited you're here because today we're going to talk about something that most English learners struggle with. If you've ever spent hours memorizing vocabulary lists and then realized that you forgot everything a few days later, don't worry, you're not alone. I've been there too, and I know how frustrating it feels when you try so hard but nothing seems to stick. The truth is, memorizing words one by one is not the most effective way to learn a language. It might work for a short time, but it doesn't help you speak naturally or understand real conversations. That's why in this episode I'm going to show you a smarter way to learn new words. I'll share with you 20 powerful tips that will help you remember vocabulary for the long term, use it with confidence, and actually enjoy the learning process. These are tips that many successful learners use, and they can make a big difference in your English journey. So if you're ready to stop memorizing and start learning in a more fun and natural way, stay with me because this episode is going to be full of helpful ideas and strategies. Let's get started. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is thinking that memorizing long lists of vocabulary will help them become fluent. I used to do the same thing. I had notebooks full of words, and I would repeat them over and over, trying to force them into my brain. And yes, maybe I could remember them for a day or two, but then, just like that, they were gone. I couldn't use them in a sentence, I didn't know how they really worked, and honestly, it just made me feel frustrated and stuck. The truth is, our brains are not designed to remember random information that has no meaning or connection. If a word isn't connected to something, like an experience, an emotion, or a real-life situation, your brain doesn't think it's important, so it lets it go. That's why memorizing isolated words doesn't help much in the long term. Instead, we need to focus on understanding words, using them, seeing them in real context. That's when learning becomes natural and powerful. When you hear or read a word in a sentence, when you see how it works in a real conversation, that's when your brain says, "Oh, this is useful, I need to remember this." So forget about long word lists. Let's start learning in a way that actually makes sense and lasts. One of the most important things I want to share with you is how much easier it is to learn new vocabulary when you learn words in context.
What does that mean?
It means instead of memorizing a single word by itself, you learn it inside a sentence, a phrase, or even a short story. This is so powerful because when you see a word in context, your brain understands how the word is actually used. It shows you the meaning, the grammar, and the natural way native speakers use it. For example, if you just try to memorize the word breathe, it might be hard to remember exactly what it means or how to use it. But if you learn it inside a sentence like, take a deep breath when you feel stressed, suddenly the word becomes alive. You can imagine yourself breathing deeply, and you also know when and how to say it. Context gives you clues, helps you remember better, and prepares you to use the word naturally when you speak or write. It's like learning the word story instead of just the word alone. So whenever you learn new vocabulary, don't just focus on the word itself, try to learn it inside sentences or conversations. This way, your brain will make stronger connections, and you'll find yourself remembering and using new words more easily and naturally. One of the best ways to improve your vocabulary is by learning through stories. Stories are powerful because they connect words to situations, emotions, and actions, which makes them much easier to remember. When you listen to or read a story, your brain doesn't just see individual words, it sees the whole picture, the characters, the places, the feelings. This creates a meaningful context for each word, and that meaning helps your memory hold on to them longer. Think about it this way, if you just memorize the word run, it might be hard to remember it later. But if you hear a story about a boy running to catch a bus, suddenly the word run has action and feeling behind it. Your brain links the word to that scene, and it becomes much easier to recall. Also, stories help you learn new vocabulary naturally because you hear the words used in different ways and situations, not just in one fixed meaning. This variety deepens your understanding and helps you use words more confidently. So instead of memorizing lists, try reading short stories, listening to audio stories, or even creating your own stories with new words. This method makes learning fun, effective, and long-lasting. One of the most important things you can do to really remember new vocabulary is to use the words you learn as soon as possible. It's not enough to just see or hear a word once and hope it sticks in your memory. Your brain needs practice to make the connection strong and permanent. When you use a new word, whether by speaking it out loud, writing sentences with it, or even thinking about it during the day, you're actively training your brain to keep that word ready for real situations. For example, if you learn the word excited, try making your own sentences like, I'm excited to watch the new movie, or say it aloud when you feel happy about something. The more you use the word, the more natural it becomes, and it becomes part of your active vocabulary, not just passive knowledge. Even if you don't have someone to talk to, you can record yourself or write short notes to practice. This kind of active use helps your brain to build strong connections, so you won't forget the words easily. Using new vocabulary regularly is one of the best ways to make sure you can recall and apply it confidently when you speak or write. So don't just memorize, use, repeat, and enjoy the words you learn. One method that really helps when learning vocabulary is called the input-first approach. This means that before you try to speak or write new words, you spend time listening to and reading English as much as possible. By doing this, you expose yourself to natural patterns, phrases, and how words fit together in real conversations or texts. For example, when you listen to a podcast, watch a movie, or read a book, you pick up on common expressions and how native speakers actually use words, which helps you understand not just the meaning but also the right way to say things. This makes it easier to remember vocabulary because your brain has already seen it in action many times. Then, when it's time to speak or write, your brain can naturally pull from that store of input you gathered, and your sentences will sound more natural and fluent. Many language experts say this is a much better way to learn than just memorizing and trying to produce words too early. So if you want to improve your English vocabulary, spend more time listening and reading first, and then use what you learn in your own speaking and writing. It makes the whole process smoother and much more effective. One of the most enjoyable and effective ways to learn new vocabulary is by watching movies, YouTube videos, or TV series in English, especially with subtitles. When you watch these kinds of content, you get to hear how words are spoken naturally, the tone, the emotions, the stress, and the rhythm of the language. This helps you understand not just the meaning of the words but also how native speakers use them in real life. For example, when a character is excited or angry, you hear the words they use and see their facial expressions or body language, which gives you a much deeper understanding of the language. Plus, subtitles help you connect the spoken words with their written form, making it easier to recognize and remember vocabulary. Watching English content is like learning vocabulary and pronunciation at the same time, and it's much more fun than just reading or memorizing lists. The key is to choose shows or videos you enjoy, so learning feels natural and not like a chore. And don't worry if you don't understand everything at first. The more you watch, the more your brain gets used to the language, and gradually, you'll start understanding more and picking up new words naturally. One really powerful technique to improve both your vocabulary and pronunciation is called shadowing. This means you listen to a native speaker, whether in a podcast, a video, or a conversation, and you try to repeat exactly what they say, right after them, matching their rhythm, tone, and speed as closely as possible. It's like you're shadowing, or following their voice. This technique helps you in two big ways. First, it helps you remember new words because you're actively using them by speaking out loud. And second, it trains your mouth and ear to get used to the natural sounds and intonation of English, so your pronunciation becomes clearer and more natural. Shadowing might feel a little challenging at first, especially if the speaker talks fast, but don't worry. Start slow, pick short sentences, and repeat them several times. Over time, you'll find it easier and you'll notice your vocabulary and speaking skills improving. It's a fun and effective way to learn that makes your English sound more like a native speaker's. One very effective method to learn and remember new vocabulary is by using flashcards, but not just any flashcards. The best ones include example sentences that show how the word is actually used in real life. When you see a word alone, like happy, it can be hard to remember exactly what it means or how to use it. But if you learn it with a sentence, for example, she felt happy when she got the good news, your brain gets a much clearer picture of how to use the word naturally. This makes the word more meaningful and easier to recall later. Even better, there are apps like Anki or Quizlet that help you study flashcards with a special technique called spaced repetition. What this means is that the app shows you each card just before you might forget it, so you review words at the right time to move them into your long-term memory. This is much smarter than cramming all the words at once and then forgetting them quickly. By regularly reviewing flashcards with sentences, your brain creates stronger connections between the words and their meanings, so you can remember and use them more easily when you speak or write. This method also helps you learn how words fit naturally into sentences, so your English sounds more fluent and natural. So, if you want to improve your vocabulary in a fun and effective way, try making flashcards with example sentences and use spaced repetition apps to review them consistently. This will save you a lot of time and help you truly learn words, not just memorize them. One of the best ways to make learning vocabulary both enjoyable and effective is by focusing on topics that you truly love or are interested in. When you try to learn random words that don't connect to your interests or daily life, it can feel boring and difficult to remember them. But when you choose subjects you are passionate about, like music, sports, cooking, fashion, or any hobby you enjoy, your brain becomes more engaged and motivated. This makes the learning process much easier and more natural. For example, if you love cooking, learning words related to ingredients, kitchen tools, or recipes will feel meaningful. You'll be excited to use these words in conversation or even while reading recipes or watching cooking shows. Similarly, if you're into sports, words like goal, team, coach, or score will come alive because you see and hear them often in contexts you enjoy. This emotional connection helps your brain hold on to vocabulary better and makes you more likely to practice and use it regularly. Another advantage of focusing on topics is that you can learn groups of related words together. When words are connected by a theme, your brain can organize them more easily and recall them faster. This is much more effective than memorizing random, disconnected words. So, when you study vocabulary, try to pick themes that excite you and relate to your life. This way, learning feels like a fun activity instead of a boring task, and your vocabulary will grow steadily without stress. It's one of the smartest ways to learn words naturally and remember them for a long time. Remembering new words is to connect them with images or emotions in your mind. Our brains are wired to remember things better when we can picture them or feel something about them. For example, if you learn the word rainy, try to imagine yourself walking outside with an umbrella, feeling the drops of rain on your skin, hearing the sound of rain hitting the window. This mental image helps the word come alive and makes it much easier to recall later. Similarly, if a word has an emotional meaning, like happy or scared, try to remember a moment when you felt that way. Connecting words to your own feelings creates a strong memory link. This technique works better than just repeating a word over and over because it uses your imagination and emotions, which are powerful memory tools. So when you learn new vocabulary, don't just say the word or write it down. Take a moment to create a mental picture or remember a feeling connected to that word. This will help you keep the word in your memory much longer and make learning more enjoyable. It's like giving each word a little story or a scene inside your mind that you can revisit anytime. One very effective strategy for learning vocabulary is to group words by theme or topic rather than studying random, unrelated words. When you try to memorize lists of words that have nothing to do with each other, your brain finds it harder to organize and remember them. But when you learn words that belong to the same category, like all the words related to the kitchen, such as fork, knife, plate, spoon, oven, and fridge, your brain naturally connects these words together. This connection makes it easier for you to recall them later because when you think of one word in the group, it triggers the memory of the others. It's like creating a network of related ideas inside your mind, which is much more powerful than storing isolated words. Also, learning vocabulary and themes helps you understand how words are used in specific contexts and situations. For example, if you learn words about travel, like passport, luggage, ticket, and boarding gate, you'll be better prepared to talk about going on a trip and understand conversations or signs at the airport. This thematic approach makes your vocabulary more practical and useful because the words come in clusters that match real-life experiences. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by trying to learn hundreds of disconnected words, you focus on smaller, meaningful groups, which makes learning more manageable and enjoyable. So, whenever you study new vocabulary, try to organize your learning by themes or topics. This method will help your brain remember words more easily and help you use them confidently in the right situations. It's a smarter, more natural way to build your English vocabulary step by step. To make new vocabulary really stick in your mind is to use the words actively, especially by speaking them out loud or practicing in real conversations. It's not enough to just read or listen to new words. Your brain needs that extra step of producing the language for it to become part of your active vocabulary. When you say the words yourself, whether you're talking to a friend, practicing with a language partner, or even just speaking to yourself, you're engaging different parts of your brain that help solidify the memory of those words. Speaking helps you get comfortable with the pronunciation, the rhythm, and how the words fit naturally in sentences. If you don't have someone to practice with, don't worry. You can still practice alone by describing your day, narrating what you're doing, or telling a story using the new vocabulary you want to learn. You can even record yourself and listen back to notice how you're using the words. This active use is very important because when you simply think about or read a word silently, it stays in your passive vocabulary. Words you recognize but don't always use. But when you speak or write those words, they move into your active vocabulary, which means you can recall and use them easily when you need them in real life. The more you practice using new words and speaking, the more natural and automatic it becomes to remember and use them. It also builds your confidence, so you're less afraid to try new words in conversations. Using vocabulary in real life, whether with others or just by practicing yourself, is one of the best ways to learn English that lasts. So don't just memorize, speak, write, and use the words actively every day, and you'll see your English improve quickly. One very effective habit to help you remember vocabulary better is to keep a personal vocabulary journal. This means having a special notebook or a digital document where you write down new words you learn, along with their meanings, example sentences, and even how they make you feel or when you heard them. Writing things down helps your brain process and remember information more deeply than just reading or listening. When you write a new word, try to include a sentence that shows how it's used naturally. For example, instead of just writing excited, you can write, I was excited to start my new job. You can also add any notes that help you remember. Maybe a synonym, an antonym, or a picture you drew. Your vocabulary journal becomes a personal resource you can review regularly, and each time you go back to it, you refresh your memory and reinforce the words in your mind. Over time, you'll build a collection of words that are meaningful to you, making it easier to recall and use them in conversation or writing. This habit also encourages active learning because you're not just passively receiving words, but engaging with them in a way that fits your style and needs. So, if you want to improve your vocabulary, start your own vocabulary journal and make it part of your daily or weekly routine. It's a simple but powerful way to learn smarter and remember better. When you're learning new vocabulary, it's important to focus on words that are useful and common in everyday English instead of trying to learn rare or very advanced words right away. Many learners get excited and try to memorize big, difficult words because they sound impressive, but the truth is, these words don't help much in daily conversations or when you're just starting out. It's much better to build a strong foundation by learning high-frequency words, the words that native speakers use all the time in speaking and writing. These include simple but essential words like go, make, want, good, and think. By mastering these common words first, you'll be able to understand and express yourself better in most situations. Once you feel comfortable with everyday vocabulary, you can gradually add more advanced words to your learning. But starting with rare or complicated words can slow you down and make learning frustrating because you might not see those words often enough to remember them. So focus on what's practical, what you can use right now, and you'll build your vocabulary more effectively and confidently. This approach helps you communicate clearly and keeps you motivated because you'll notice real progress faster. One of the best ways to make learning vocabulary easier, more engaging and effective is by using mobile apps specifically designed for language learners. Nowadays, there are many great apps like Duolingo, Memrise, LingQ, and others that turn vocabulary learning into a fun, interactive experience. These apps don't just ask you to memorize words, they use different types of exercises like matching games, fill in the blanks, speaking practice, and quizzes that keep your brain active and involved. What's really useful about these apps is that they often include pictures, audio recordings by native speakers, and example sentences, which help you learn words in context and understand how to pronounce them correctly. This multisensory approach, seeing, hearing, and using the words, makes it easier to remember and apply vocabulary in real life. Another great feature is spaced repetition, which means the app reminds you to review words right before you forget them, helping move new vocabulary from short-term memory to long-term memory. The convenience of these apps is also a big advantage. You can study whenever you have a few free minutes, whether you're commuting, waiting in line, or just relaxing at home. This makes it easier to stay consistent, which is one of the most important parts of language learning. Plus, many apps include progress tracking and rewards like points or badges, which motivates you to keep going and makes learning feel like a game rather than a chore. If you want to improve your vocabulary without getting bored or overwhelmed, trying out some of these language learning apps is a smart choice. Find the one that suits your style and start practicing regularly. Over time, you'll notice your vocabulary growing, your confidence improving, and learning English becoming a much more enjoyable experience. One of the most effective habits you can develop to improve your vocabulary is practicing writing every single day using the new words you're learning. Writing is a powerful tool because it forces your brain to actively process the language, not just passively recognize it. When you write, you have to think carefully about how to use the words correctly, how to form sentences, and how the words connect with each other. This active engagement helps your brain build stronger memory connections than just reading or listening. Even if you only write a few sentences or a short paragraph each day, this consistent practice adds up over time and leads to significant progress. For example, you can start by writing a simple diary entry about your day, describing what you did, how you felt, or what you saw. Try to include some of the new vocabulary you've recently learned. Another idea is to write short descriptions of places, people, or objects around you, using different words to explain details. You could even write small stories or dialogues practicing new phrases. The key is to use the vocabulary actively and creatively, not just copying words from a list. Writing regularly also helps you understand grammar better because you see how words work together naturally in sentences. It gives you a chance to review and reinforce vocabulary, which helps move the words from your short-term memory into your long-term memory, making them easier to recall when you speak or read. The more you practice writing, the more confident you become in using English, and this confidence carries over to other skills like speaking and listening. Even if your schedule is busy, try to make writing a small daily habit. Even 5 or 10 minutes can make a big difference. Over time, you'll notice your vocabulary growing stronger, your sentences sounding more natural, and your overall English improving. Writing is one of the smartest and most rewarding ways to learn new vocabulary deeply and use it with confidence. One of the most enjoyable and effective ways to improve your vocabulary is by playing word games in English. These games make learning feel like fun instead of a chore, which helps you stay motivated and engaged. Games like Scrabble, crossword puzzles, word searches, and even mobile apps designed around word challenges require you to think about words, their spellings, and their meanings in creative ways. For example, when you play Scrabble, you're not just randomly placing letters, you're actively recalling vocabulary, considering word combinations, and strategically using words you know to score points. This kind of mental exercise helps strengthen your memory and makes it easier to remember those words later. Crossword puzzles also give you a chance to connect words with definitions and synonyms, which deepens your understanding of how words are used. Word searches challenge your eye to recognize words quickly, reinforcing your spelling and vocabulary recognition. And the great thing about many word games today is that they come in digital forms, so you can play them anytime on your phone or computer, whether you're waiting for something or relaxing at home. Playing word games can also be a social activity if you play with friends or join online communities, making learning more interactive and fun. Because these games are enjoyable, you're more likely to spend time with English regularly without feeling bored or overwhelmed. This regular exposure and practice build your vocabulary naturally over time. So, if you want to improve your English while having fun, try incorporating word games into your daily routine. Find the types of games you enjoy most, and you'll be surprised how quickly your vocabulary grows without even feeling like you're studying. One surprisingly simple but highly effective way to practice your English vocabulary and speaking skills is by using voice assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa in English. These digital helpers are available on most smartphones and smart devices, and they offer a fantastic opportunity to interact with English in a natural, everyday context, even if you don't have someone to practice with. You can ask questions, give commands, or have short back-and-forth exchanges with these assistants, which helps you practice both speaking and listening in a low-pressure environment. For example, you might say, "Hey Siri, what's the weather like today?" Or, "Okay Google, set a reminder for 5 p.m. When you do this, you're using common, practical vocabulary and phrases that people use in real life, and you're training your brain to recognize and produce natural English sentences. The great thing about voice assistants is that they usually respond only to clear and simple language, which encourages you to speak slowly and pronounce words carefully. This kind of practice can improve your pronunciation and help you get comfortable with the rhythm and flow of English. Additionally, experimenting with voice assistants can be fun and motivating. You can ask them to tell you jokes, play music, or even help you learn new words by asking for definitions or translations. Over time, as you get used to speaking English with these assistants regularly, you'll notice your confidence growing. You'll find it easier to remember useful vocabulary and phrases because you're using them actively in real, meaningful situations rather than just memorizing them. So if you're looking for an easy and practical way to practice English every day, try talking to a voice assistant in English and make it part of your daily routine. It's a smart, accessible, and enjoyable method to boost your language skills naturally. One of the most powerful and effective ways to really remember new vocabulary is to teach the words you learn to someone else. When you explain the meaning of a word, how to use it, or give examples to another person, you're doing more than just sharing information. You're reinforcing your own understanding and memory of that word. Teaching forces you to organize your thoughts, put the word into your own language, and think about it from different angles. This process creates stronger mental connections and helps move the word from short-term to long-term memory. It's like the saying goes, the best way to learn something is to teach it. When you prepare to explain a word clearly, you have to fully understand it yourself, which deepens your knowledge and helps you remember it better. Even if you don't have a language partner or friend to teach, you can still practice by pretending to teach someone. For example, talk out loud to yourself, record short videos or voice notes explaining new words, or write explanations in a journal. This active engagement makes the words feel more real and easier to recall when you need to use them in speaking or writing. Another great benefit of teaching vocabulary is that it helps you identify gaps in your knowledge. Sometimes, when you try to explain a word, you realize you're not sure about its exact meaning or how to use it correctly. This gives you a clear sign of what to review more. So teaching your vocabulary not only helps you remember better, but also guides your learning process. So instead of quietly memorizing new words, try sharing them, teaching them, and making this an active part of your English practice. This simple but powerful strategy will boost your memory, increase your confidence, and help you use new vocabulary more naturally in real conversations. It's a smart way to make your English learning more interactive, enjoyable, and effective. So, to sum up everything we talked about today, learning vocabulary is not about forcing yourself to memorize endless lists of words that quickly slip away from your memory. Instead, it's about finding ways to make the learning process meaningful, enjoyable, and connected to real life. When you learn words in context, use them in sentences, relate them to images or feelings, and practice speaking and writing regularly, you're giving your brain the best chance to remember and use those words naturally. Using tools like stories, flashcards with example sentences, apps, games, or even voice assistants can make your learning journey more fun and effective. Remember, building your vocabulary is a gradual process. It takes patience, consistency, and a positive mindset. Don't get discouraged if you forget words or feel like progress is slow at times. That's completely normal and part of learning. What matters most is to keep practicing a little every day and to use different methods that work best for you. Over time, all those small efforts add up and your English will improve in ways you might not expect. Thank you so much for listening and joining me today. I hope these tips inspire you to stop just memorizing words and start truly learning and enjoying English. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and remember that every new word you learn is a step closer to becoming confident and fluent. I'm excited to be part of your language journey, and I'll see you in the next episode with more helpful advice. Until then, keep speaking, keep learning, and have fun with English.